Welcome to the January 13th meeting of the Franklin Board of Education. This meeting has been properly posted. Ms. Larson, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Alexandrovich.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. Sprague.
Here.
Mrs. Sapersky.
Here.
Mr. Gamble.
Here.
We are all present.
Thank you. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Witkowski,
Second.
second by Mr. Sprague. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Community comment period. Participants under this agenda item must limit their statements to 3 minutes with a maximum of 15 minutes for any and all comment. If the community comment is related to an agenda item, the board may respond to that comment either at the end of community comment session or during the discussion of that agenda item. The board may not discuss a comment or question that does not relate to an agenda item per Board Policy Administrative Rules number 8300. Would anyone like to speak today? Any community comments? Hearing none, we'll close community comments period. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Larson,
Second.
second by Mr. Lewis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Are there any board announcements from members?
The Franklin Educational Foundation is celebrating their 25th anniversary this year, and they will be having a golf outing at Oakwood on June 18th. So look for information for that, and like to get as many people as possible.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, school board calendar. Board of Education workshop, Wednesday, January 27th, here at the ECC at 6 p.m. A regular Board of Education meeting, January 27th, here at the ECC at 7 p.m. And a regular Board of Educating, get the words out here. Board of Education meeting, February 19th, here at the ECC at 6 p.m. District Administrator update from Dr. Miller.
Good evening. Seems a bit late to say Happy New Year, but Happy New Year. So since our last board meeting in early December, I'm pleased to report that our case rate, our positive case rate for COVID was low. And while it's been ticking up a little bit the last few days, we're still in a very good place to continue in-person learning. We're watching very closely those numbers, and if they do hit the 3% positivity rate, we will again then move to virtual for a period of time. We're excited that the vaccine has now become available within our community, and just recently our nurses were vaccinated. Our employees in our health rooms will be vaccinated, along with our therapists and our social workers. So that's going to be happening this week and next week. We are in the process of serving our elementary parents who have their children at home learning virtually since the beginning of the year, providing them the option to return to school in person for the third trimester. That survey is out since the beginning of this week and will need to be returned by next Monday. The data as of today, and we have about 50% of those back from our virtual families, indicates that about 18% of those students would want to return to in-person learning. So that number is around 39 students. Again, this is only half of the data. We don't have all the data. That would be 39 students coming back into approximately 68 of our classrooms 4K through 5 throughout the district, just to kind of give you a sense of what that data is looking like right now. Along with our equity work, which some of you were here to hear a little bit more about, we are very involved in the refresh of our 3-year coherence plan, which is in its 3rd and final year. So at future board meetings, we'll be here talking to the board about what that plan will look like for us and what will guide our work for the next 3 years in this district to continue to be a high-achieving school district. We are heading into our assessment period for the district. Currently, our students are engaging in the MAP assessment again. They will be participating in what's called the Test of Cognitive Abilities. We call it the COGAT, and that's provided to students in grade 3 and any new students in grade 4 through 6. And Dr. Cohn and his team are working very hard to determine the best ways to administer these tests to our students who are at home learning virtually. ACT is in March, and what we've decided to do there is, because we've gotten good at this, we're going to have our 9th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade students have synchronous virtual learning on that day and only have our 11th grade students at school during that ACT test administration. Did I get that correct, Dr. Cohn?
Yes, that's
Perfect. And then in April, we will be participating in the state assessment called the Forward Exam. So we have a lot of work to do to prepare for those assessments. In a recent meeting with the SWSA, and Ms. Witkowski might be able to report on a few of those things because she was present at that meeting, we learned more about new federal funding that's coming to school districts. And the specifics haven't gotten here yet with regard to the amount, but we do have some preliminary information about how that funding can be used. So the funding that we should and expect to receive could be used for COVID-19 preparedness and response, addressing long-term school closures, educational technology, outreach and service delivery for special populations, addressing after-school and summer learning, mental health services and support, and continued staff employment. So we're pleased to see that there's some pretty broad categories, and it looks like we'll have some opportunities and some flexibilities with this future round of funding. And then finally, I'm proud to announce that we have 7 candidates for our 5 seats, for our 3 seats on the school board. And I'm just very, very pleased that our community is interested in engaging with our school district. And I thank the candidates and look forward to the upcoming primary election and then final election. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Item 9 is reports, presentations, and other school board business. First is our principal action plan update for Ben Franklin, Countrydale, and Robinwood Elementary Schools. Ms. Shannon, Mr. LaPlante, and Mr. Nelson.
Good evening. As they're coming up and getting settled, go ahead. You're going to notice it's a little bit different, right? The previous 2 months, we had one school, right? So Franklin High School presented, and then last month, we had the middle school. Tonight, you're going to hear from 3 of our elementary schools, and the reason for that is they're engaged in very similar work with their teams. And so they're going to walk you through some of that work kind of collectively as one presentation this evening. You do have the separate reports for each school within board docs, and then I also left you a copy of the annual scorecard if you wanted to make some connections again tonight between what they're sharing and what we're focused on as a district this year. So I'm glad they're here tonight. You're going to want to be by the mic so that we can pick you up on it.
Like standing.
Well, good evening, everyone. Am I in the mic? Is it good? Before we get started, I just wanted to, it's been a while since we've been there, so we want to do some quick introductions, and we also have a new member. So do some quick introductions just so you see the principals and make a good connection. So I'm Chad Nelson. I'm the principal at Robinwood Elementary. So nice to see everyone.
I'm Mary Shannon. I'm the interim principal at Ben Franklin Elementary.
I'm Shauna LaPlante, and I'm the principal at Countrydale.
So thank you for having us tonight and giving us the opportunity to share the great work that our staffs are doing through our action plans. As part of Franklin Public Schools, we're very proud of the work we're doing, and not only what we're doing, but also why we're doing it and partaking in it. You've seen the data, you've seen the goals in the written reports already. And we know that as we work on high-performing team development, we are going to increase student achievement through that work. A major emphasis of this work has been building the belief within our teams that they impact student achievement together. And that is called teacher or collective teacher efficacy. We do want you to understand that our buildings are in different places, so we work in different ways and we work on different timelines. So for instance, at Robinwood, we've done a lot of learning up to this point, and we've created mastery goals based on all of that learning as a next step in the process at Robinwood for our team development. Shauna?
Yeah, and at Country Dale, we've been learning about the importance of collective efficacy and really learning into some of the research by Jenny Donahue and John Hattie. So our focus on collaboration as a staff is something that we actually started last year. So this isn't brand new to us, but much of our professional development is really designed to help my teachers learn how to take their work as high-performing teams to an even deeper level.
And at Ben Franklin, we've completely built new teams of teachers from almost every elementary school across the district, and led by a brand new principal as well. So as a staff, we've all brought our own cultures and varying levels of expertise to Ben Franklin. The work that we are doing is to build strong teams, and building strong relationships will help us to get to the big work of continuous improvement. Like each of our buildings, each of our teams in Ben Franklin are at slightly different places in terms of becoming high-performing teams. So tonight, we'd like to walk you through a success protocol that Chad, Sean, and I have tried with our teams within our own buildings. And the goal is to get at what success looks like and feels like in order to replicate that process to help teams in their work of becoming high-performing teams. So I've put some Post-its out in between you, and we'd like to kind of set you up in partnerships and then have one triad over here on the end, so between you. So you'll be doing some work individually and then in a partnership, okay? So I'll kind of walk you through the different steps, all right? So step one, just to kind of wrap your head around what we're thinking about, I want you to think about some success that you have experienced on a team. So that team might be here on the school board, or it might be in a personal or professional team that you've participated on. So I want you to think about a success. So this is something different than like routine work that you've done. So it's a success that you experienced. So I want you to think about that for just a minute, what that might be. And then I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to write this down on a Post-it. And there's 3 questions that are going to kind of guide what you're thinking about. So think about, what are the specifics of the success? What made the experience different from others like it? And what did it mean in terms of your team's work?
Could you repeat those one more time?
Yes, absolutely. What are the specifics of the success? What made the experience different from others like it? And what did it mean in terms of your team's work?
What do you mean by that? Yeah, that's, what was the last one? What did you mean by that?
So your success, like what did that success mean in terms of the work you were doing?
I mean, what did it develop? What was the outcome?
Absolutely, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Sure, set a timer.
Thank you. About 1 more minute. Thumbs up if you need more time. All right, within your small group or your partnership, what I'd like you to do is take turns. Oh, sorry, did you have your thumb up? Okay, sorry. Within your small group, I'd like you to take turns describing your example with as much detail as possible. As one person is talking in your group, the other person, or the other people in your group, are going to be taking notes and then ask clarifying questions. And the purpose is really to uncover why the team team experience was so successful. And then for you to look for more ways to identify the successes. Some additional questions that you might ask the person who's talking is, why did you think this? Or what was different about that? Or why did you decide to, just examples to get some questions out of the person who's sharing their example. So you have about 4 minutes to complete this, so go ahead and turn and talk with each other.
So I would go back.
as a small group, what we'd like you to do next is, we'd like you to reflect on the factors that contributed to the success of each of those experiences that you had. So make a list of the things that you would consider the factors that contributed to the success. Go ahead and share that with your partner.
So inherent risk, right? Shared,
Trust. Common purpose.
yep, clearly defined common purpose.
Yeah, clearly defined roles.
Yep, vulnerability.
Yeah, and accountability. So we all share the accountability and ownership to the risk.
That was us as well, all of those things.
Yep.
The meetings after the meetings, right? Like the, for me, it was the,
So when I went on the national circuit, 3 of them went with me.
yeah, that was me with Tom and some of those other guys that I used to complain in your office about, right?
Yeah.
Like, they hate us.
Yes, and we fixed that. And Rachel rose to the occasion. Did a nice job. I still remember she's sitting in the office freaking out. We should have thrown a marketing
thinking about, yeah, educational assistants and teachers support staff. I don't know what you call those, coaches, or how are they participating in teams?
So for this specific protocol at Countrydale, we didn't have support staff. We did this during a professional development day, and we did it in the afternoon. But there are certain activities and things that we might have our support staff join us, especially when we're talking about equity and social and emotional learning. They're part of that. So they're still on a team, but it just looks a little bit different.
Okay. And then I know you provided data on the MAPS test, and I think we're seeing for the first time, what may have happened when we went to virtual, because we see these scores there's a little bit of a gap. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Are you concerned? Are we going to, I mean, this is just one data point, obviously, and there's 2 more data points yet for this year. So what
That
are you
was
thinking?
a national trend that NWA actually had shared, that overall across the nation, the data had dipped in the fall for students based on what happened. And of course, we're concerned about that, and that's why we're doing this work in order to close that gap and get students where they need to be.
So if you remember back to the annual assessment report in December, right, I had shared with you the district-wide data, and we had talked about the fact that math in particular, there was some regression, right, in terms of the growth outcome, same with reading. But certainly this next round of MAP data is going to be important for us, right? We're going to want to see what that growth has been since the fall. And so our teams will be diligent about looking at that information together and talking about what's working and what's not, and, make sure that we're closing gaps and moving forward. So.
Absolutely.
I guess, what are we thinking that catch-up looks like? We go faster with our curriculum, or what does that catch-up look like?
I think it depends. I'm going to lean into Mary too and her expertise, but I can tell you in certain grade levels, it could be my first grade team digging into our kindergarten where they left off and actually taking their curriculum. And that's where we started in the beginning of the school year, because we don't want to disregard what they may have missed, because that's not going to help our students either.
We also have a cyclical curriculum at K-8, so concepts come back over time. And so as we work with the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project, they readjusted their curriculum calendars and how we built our scope and sequence this year, given the nationwide pandemic and shutdown last year. So we realign, and then we major minor in math. We're implementing new science curriculum, so it's new, and social studies is kind of at status quo. So those adjustments were made back in July and August to determine the course of action of our curriculum for this upcoming year, knowing where we left off in person last spring.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I
Thank
guess
you very much.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
just
one
one other
more?
one. I do notice that the category under the adults in my school talk with me about things I'm interested in. Those tend to be 3/4 of our kids think we're doing that, but there's like 25% that don't. They come to school and they're not interested. And it's kind of across buildings. What does that mean, or why do you think, what's your insight there, and what are we doing to?
I think our next steps around that, we just finished doing some student focus groups where kids came in and they talked with adults, and that was one of the questions that was asked. And so we're just in the process of looking at what the kids' responses are. Like, what is it that you want to talk about at school? What do you want adults to know about you? So it was a really good chance to just kind of dig a little bit deeper with students separate from the survey that they take. So it was nice to get that personal feel. So we're in the process of kind of looking through what we learned about the students and what they want to share with adults.
And
how
Mary,
we
that's a
wanna get
data
at
set
it.
your school improvement team is going to look at, right,
Yes,
and have dialogue
absolutely.
about.
And there's a connection directly to the identity pieces of equity that we talked about tonight. And so as we think about programming too, kids grab books and they read, and do they see themselves in the stories that they read? And so then that's an opportunity for a teacher to better understand individual and cultural identities of our students.
Okay, I mean, it seems like that would be an easy area to see some movement on, I guess. Doesn't look like it's changed much, so. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next is our Buildings and Grounds Annual Report, Mr. Milzer and Mr. Stumbaugh.
We have our Manager of Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Stumbaugh, with us tonight to go over our Buildings and Grounds Annual Report, which kind of goes over what we accomplished this year as well as what we're looking at doing in the future.
Good evening. Our building and grounds department encompasses custodial, maintenance, grounds, construction, and planning. We have 43 FTE employees and typically carry 5 to 10 seasonal and substitute custodians for cleaning and maintaining our 928,000 square feet of interior space, as well as maintaining over 220 acres of land. Our district continues to be in a time period where many of our roofs and HVAC systems are at or approaching life expectancy due to the amount of referendum work and additions to most of the buildings in the early 90s. Which has led to these resources coming due all around the same time. Last year, I laid out a plan and presented a way for us to accomplish two things. One, proactively replacing systems that need to be replaced before it's too late, or in other words, before they fail. And two, by spreading this work out over multiple years in the foreseeable future, we can even out the number of resources coming due at one time for future replacement cycles. We had a very successful year, but also faced some challenges with supply chain issues and in completing some of our projects. But we were able to complete all of our planned projects from last year's report on time. In our first round of roofing and HVAC replacement, we were able to replace 2 sections of roof at the high school, as well as 1 at Southwood Glen, totaling in 37,000 square feet of roofs. As well as 8 rooftop units at the high school, along with many other additional projects throughout the year, as seen in page 5 in the report. Going into the 21-22 school year, I'm expecting to see some rising costs with the current market conditions and fewer issues with supply chains and delays. But we will continue with the multi-year plan in replacing over 40,000 square feet in roof between Southwood Glen, the high school, Pleasant View, and Countrydale, while also replacing 6 rooftop units at the high school with the rest of the projects listed in the report. We need to recognize the fact that needs for maintenance and code compliance could change at a moment's notice. This also could change how we select projects or in the order in which they are done, while also trying to align our future work to meet the needs of the district. Like everyone else across the district, COVID has been very challenging for us this year. Our building and grounds team reviewed our current cleaning procedures and introduced new procedures as well, like cleaning restrooms and high traffic touch points multiple times a day, while also introducing new equipment such as industrial type paint sprayers to disinfect our schools on a much larger scale and as a way to be more efficient while doing that. To acquiring supplies during national shortages, which was extremely challenging and time consuming. If you think back to early summer when toilet paper and cleaning supplies weren't available, and try to imagine the operation that we run here and trying to get those supplies, it was a pretty big task. We were also tasked with a number of additional duties to support other operational departments throughout the district, while trying to maintain our cleaning standards and expectations we have to our schools, to get our schools ready for in-person instruction. The entire custodial team has been absolutely fantastic and eager to support the needs of our district. We realize it is not just about keeping our buildings clean and maintained anymore. Our department plays a pivotal role in keeping them safe as well. Never have their services and dedication been more needed and appreciated during this global pandemic. I would like to publicly thank everyone in the Building and Grounds Department for their hard work and dedication. I'd also like to thank everyone sitting around this board table tonight for your leadership and continued support during this pandemic. So thank you, and at this time, if you have any questions about the report or anything I have said, I will open it up.
I have a question. So page 5 then is the listing of planned projects for the next budget year plus the next 3 years. Is that correct?
On page 5, did you say page 5?
Yep. top of
Page
or-
5 is what we had completed, the 2020, or.
I'm sorry, page 6.
Page 6?
Yep.
Yes, that is what we are targeting to accomplish.
So last year, that page did identify the Robin Wood fire panel replacement, which is off the list now. It got moved back for a reason. What would be,
We have had some significant leaking and concerns of roofing at the high school as well as some HVAC concerns that we need to address.
although we,
What are the risks in not doing the fire alarm panel?
It's working. It's just parts are becoming harder to find, but we can still get the parts. So it's something that I initially thought, if we can do it, let's do it. But leaking roofs is a little bit more important right now and something that we can still get parts for. So
well, the budget has gone up about 200,000 since last year's submission. I'm assuming you may have accommodated those roofing concerns in the additional expenditure.
yes. Well, that's also with the turf. I'm going to speak to that.
Right, the softball teams have a couple of fields that they use. One is our softball field at the high school. The other are fields that are on city property behind the Department of Public Works. And we share that with another group, but the city has notified us that they're going to be using that space, which is on their property, and they'll be doing away with the baseball fields in 2022. So in order to get all of our teams their practice time and their game time, we either need to build another field, find another field, or the solution that's on here is to use turf on the existing field that we have to get more use out of it. These games are played in the spring when we have a lot of rain, snow lingering to begin with, and it really tears up a regular field to use it that much at that point. But if we have turf, all of that goes through the turf pretty quickly, and it's all usable again after that. So that's what we're looking at doing. It's the cheapest alternative to make that work.
There's not other fields available? I mean, Franklin's got a lot of athletic fields, the Rock, there's a lot of.
You have to pay for using everything at the Rock, so it's fairly expensive. And softball fields are in shorter supply than baseball fields.
How does the unscheduled project list work into all of this? I mean, I see what the projected expenditures are for this year, and then, as Linda said, the Robin Wood fire alarm panel replacement is out to 24, 25 now. And then I see on the buildings and grounds unscheduled project list, a drive loop for the dumpster area and receiving at Ben Franklin. Isn't a fire alarm system more important than a drive loop by a dumpster? If something like that's gonna be done, why don't we substitute the fire alarm panel for something like that?
Are you talking the unscheduled project
Yeah,
list?
the unscheduled.
This is
That's why I said, how does the unscheduled project list work into all this? Is this something that's probably gonna be done next year, or is this something that's,
This is our,
could be years off?
our future
Okay.
wish list,
All right.
I guess you could say.
And it could very well be that that fire alarm panel gets replaced, but we have to hold back on some of our funds for anything that might come up that was unscheduled, we didn't know about, it's an emergency. And then as we get farther along in the year and we haven't had as many of those, then we can do a few things on that list to get those done. And the fire panel would be up there on wanting to get that done.
So this is the budget for planned, 900,000? This is the next budget, correct?
Right.
And what is the unplanned amount that you expect to include?
Casey, do you have that?
I do not have that I do not have that number with me right now.
What was it last year?
Somewhere it says a dollar per square foot, Linda.
Total of one.
$1.2 million or something.
Is that on the bottom of page 8, the total for the unscheduled projects?
Well, my question is, Jim mentioned that they have other dollars than the above the 900,000 that they have in the budget for unplanned. I want to know what that.
310.
I'm sorry?
It's about 310,000.
310,000 is, so 1.3 is the 1.2. Okay. So the softball infield turf, that's a priority. It's what we're going to do. How old is that field?
6 years, maybe?
I guess, I don't think we've used it to that extent. Are we certain that this is going to be tore up like you say it is?
Yes, we're certain of that. If you put that many kids on a field like that during the spring when it's raining, it really gets bad. It's also a situation where they can't use it, so they can't practice because it's wet. They can't use it because it's wet, so they end up not being able to have their sport, more likely.
I guess we've always had weather like that. That's not new.
Well, we've always had 2 or 3 fields as well. So that's given us the outlet to have them in different locations then, and we don't have to have as many usages of a single field during a week. And then it works out. If you're not using it too much, and you can wait a day if it rained, it's okay. But when you have all 3 levels wanting practices and games, it just gets too much to do that on one field that isn't available all the time.
Fine. The list of unscheduled project lists, that also has some new projects on, is that correct?
There are a few on there, that is correct.
Could you talk about them?
I added replacing coat hooks and shelving units at Countrydale. That is one of them on there. Through our rounding and work earlier this year, it was identified that we needed to do some work in the construction shop, or they requested some work to be done in the lower level of our shop classes as far as lighting and painting. So that is one of those items on this list that you will see that we will try to tackle.
It's lighting and painting?
Lighting, painting, and then possibly some new equipment for the shop classes. But that's not on my part of the budget here.
Anything else? What about the high school rec entrance? Is that new?
That is on there as well, yes.
So, where
And
do these
mostly
projects?
what's that?
How do these projects get added to this list?
Requests from principals, staff members, things that we identify that we want to tackle.
Does this list ever get smaller?
Usually not. It's usually something comes off and 2 or 3 more get added.
Okay, and I know that Jim brought the big picture project list that board members, what we saw last year. And where's that stand at this point? Any changes there? And I don't know if all current board members are aware of it or have seen that list.
We brought that in 2019. A couple of things have been added to the list, and we've done a couple of things like purchasing the land next to the ECC, purchasing the land on 92nd and Ryan, doing the locker rooms at the high school, and then this addition renovation to Pleasant View was also on the list.
What's the plan to tackle some of those, or opportunities that we have going forward?
The things on that list are mainly things that would be funded by Fund 46 as we build that up, or by referendum. For instance, one of the items on that list is the next elementary school, which we don't need right now, but at some point in the future we will. That would be a referendum item. The additions to the high school for adding on for Phi-Ed classes, as well as gym space, would most likely be a referendum, the large ticket item.
I see that the Pleasant View remodel is on there.
Right.
Project we did last year. And when So there will be no Project 46 proposed then in next round, next budget cycle?
The turf project could be a Fund 46 project, but we're closing out our last project with Fund 46 and kind of seeing how we're doing this year. But that would be one that could be as part of that. It's also listed on the long-term list. But there are other things included in it there. The baseball field's included in it. I think lights were included at that time. And a few other things for baseball. So this is a subset of that item.
The softball? You're confusing me. Are you saying-
Softball is.
When you say baseball, you mean the same thing? I mean, is that one sport or one?
No, boys' baseball has a different field and is a different game than girls' softball.
Okay. I didn't see anything on here about softball in the long-range plan, so.
I don't have it in front of me, but I could take a look. I think we had maybe 1.4 million in for that.
It was over $1 million. So just to be clear, and the reason I'm bringing it up for other board members, this really is the first of the next budget cycle, right, Jim? This is our shot at any projects that you would be including in the next budget. If
Right.
we agree to these
These-
projects,
these-
these are the projects that we're going to see.
Right, these are the projects that would be included in the budget. When we get to that point, these are the ones that we'll work on this spring, getting them set up, making sure we're ready to go and get them done.
And then the notable projects that are listed underneath the 2021 projects are projects that were just kind of added on,
Yes.
that weren't planned on.
They weren't planned. They were in that set where when we got past the point where
They were in
We
the
were
unscheduled project list.
they were the unscheduled project list that then got put in as we felt we had the money to do them.
So the unscheduled project list, it's always about the same amount of items, but the items how many items do we get to in a year roughly, or how much money do we get to in a year roughly?
It really depends on
I
the
just-
projects that we have listed.
The 2021, I just added it up, it was 786,897 of the scheduled, and then the notable additional projects was another $465,000 approximately.
Although some was grant funded. COVID is 145,000.
Okay.
So they're smaller things.
So is it usually about 30% in addition to what the scheduled projects are or
Try
something
for
like that?
the
Pardon?
350 to 400,000
Mhm.
for emergencies and things that come up during the year.
Were the roof projects, did we do more roof projects or more square footage than we thought we were going to do?
Yes, we did.
Or was it a cost overrun?
It was more roofing than we thought we were gonna do. We were able to take advantage of the buildings having some downtime with COVID, so.
So everything else I see on here seems to be on budget from last year, which is fantastic. And that was a question I had is that commensurate square footage wise with what the budget?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next would be a discussion of WASB resolutions. Would any board member like to discuss the resolutions?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Okay,
Resolution 2101. And I don't know why they listed as a 1 cent sales tax, 1% sales tax. I am of the personal opinion that funding of the schools is better done through property taxes than any, specifically a sales tax.
Sales tax is a regressive tax, which in turn adversely affects individuals of lower income more than it does those of higher income. So we're saying with a tax like this that those who are less fortunate should fund the schools at a greater rate than those aren't. You know, more of their disposable income goes toward those needs where they'd be spending it, where they're taxed for sales tax. It's just, I think it's a wrong way to do it. And historically, it's been done through property tax, and if they're gonna, I mean, I would rather see it done on an income tax versus a sales tax, because even an income tax is more fair than a sales tax is to lower income individuals. So that's my opinion on that, and I just think it's wrong for the WASB to even be recommending something like this.
Any other comment?
I agree, for all the reasons you stated. And when sales tax, in the past, and it seems like one of those things that happens when sales tax gets added up, they try to put a ceiling on it, and that ceiling never happens. So it's, the sales tax is, they find something else to put it on at some point, and so sales tax is, it's regressive, and it continues on forever.
I actually did some research on it, and looking at sales tax, it just is not, I don't believe it's the way to go. There was Matthew Gardner, the executive director of the Institute of Tax and Economic Policy, and this was in a Bloomberg publication, says of the three main forms of state taxes, sales, property, and income, the sales tax hurts the poor most, says Gardner. State sales taxes are highly regressive. He says that they end up taking a bigger chunk of change from people that have smaller sums of money and slower income growth. And it's just, I was actually surprised to see the school board group even suggest it.
I don't support it. I understand the purpose, though, was to provide a more diverse revenue source. And when you think about it, though, 2/3 of funding comes from the state. Where do you think the state money comes from? Income tax.
Well,
sales
I
tax.
know, but see, that's what I'm saying. I'd rather see an income tax or property tax than a sales tax.
I
It's
just
just not
don't,
fair.
right, I wouldn't support the idea of this carving off this special stream of revenue just for schools and funding it this way. So that's why I would be opposed to it.
And I think, as Mr. Sprague was alluding to, there is no sunset provision in this. The verbiage says the tax would remain in place for a long enough period of time to enable schools to borrow, i.e. issue bonds, against this revenue stream. So that's going to extend it out for decades.
So you're a representative at the meeting, is that correct?
And
Oh, Ann is, oh, okay.
I thought you are, and I'm the alternate?
Oh, he has a plan B there for you.
Maybe you're finding out just as we all are.
I'll be there.
It's
Okay.
virtual, so you don't have to actually be there.
Yep. So there's a,
But you know, you get to vote, you're
Yeah.
okay.
right.
So I think as a board, we don't support this, or?
Well, that was going to be my next question. So as a board, do we want our delegate to support this resolution or not?
No, I do not.
I think consensus seems to be a no.
You
I
intend,
don't remember what we've done in the past, how did,
I think we,
Yeah, you typically did not call for a vote on this. You just would reach consensus on what the delegate should do during the meeting.
Was there any other resolution to discuss?
what is the, I guess I'd like to hear what administration would say about the instruction on Indigenous tribes, 2104. Do we think we need this to?
Yeah, it's, it's part of Act 31, and if you reference an email I sent to you this past summer about update around curriculum review and social studies, this is an area that we're statutorily required to educate, dating back to all the way to 1989. And if you think about in most school settings, including ours in Franklin, that's why we're in review, we talk about Indigenous people of the state, maybe in 4th grade, and then we move on. This act is really about talking about that historical perspective throughout time, and not just in one grade level, but through the course of study of history. I actually was able to, a year ago in January, when we could still go in person, I went through a training on understanding how to integrate Act 31 through curriculum, scope, and sequence of kindergarten through 12th grade. So administration would be in support of this, because this would be funding to help us to educate our teachers to implement new aspects of curriculum when we get through a review process. So it would be funding that we could use that wouldn't be our own from our own budget, but from the state level, to build a more culturally responsive curriculum and experience for all children.
So unfunded mandate again, or
I'm sorry?
is this an unfunded mandate then?
Yes, currently it is. It's do this without any state funding.
How about 2107, rehiring of retired teachers and staff? Valerie, do you have any comments on that?
Sure. Generally always have a comment, Claude.
What's that?
I generally always have something to say. So at the state level, the Board for Human Resource Professionals, of which I sit, we advocate for this because it still is up to us whether we do or don't hire that retiree. But in certain shortage areas where there is not the ability within the labor market for a fit for the position, but we're aware among districts of a potential retiree that might come back, the impediments around, the days that we have to wait till they can, and then the restrictions around how much they can work really do impede our ability to put that qualified individual with our children. So we would advocate for it.
So do they still collect their pensions and everything?
Yes,
So
and
they're
that's
double dipping like?
correct. But it still gives us the quality of the candidate that we need before our
So
kids.
do we reduce their salary by the amount they're getting in their retirement pay?
No, the salary is commensurate with the position, their experience, and the market for the position.
This doesn't make sense.
We save on the retirement cost.
Well, we potentially save on the benefit side because they could be carrying their benefits under whatever district, right, that they retired out of. This isn't necessarily just our retirees.
Okay.
Valley, do they continue to gather credit towards a better retirement benefits?
No, they have to decide right now whether they collect their annuity or they are eligible for new contributions to the WRS.
Okay, but if we hire a teacher and they work for 10 years, do they accrue any additional benefits over that period?
If
They're already
they,
collecting at a different rate.
correct,
So that would be triple dipping.
correct.
Yeah, but they're working.
True.
If you hired anybody else, they'd be accruing benefits and getting paid.
Wouldn't necessarily be accruing benefits.
Yeah, certainly in a 401k environment, which is a very different environment than a pension or a defined contribution environment or a defined benefit environment. So there are certainly rules around what they have to do with respect to the WRS, and we don't necessarily, that's why I think you see in that second half how broadly it's written, that they're not going to get into the specifics of it. What really we want the restriction lifted around is the ability for them to, right now they cannot work full-time. They are restricted from working full-time without compromising their WRS, and that is very prohibitive for us to rehire them back.
Any other discussion?
Also, the Resolution 2106, we're going to not, DPI is prohibited from publishing any accountability reports. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm always in favor of flexibility when it comes to state report card. I think right now is a really difficult environment for them to publish a state report card. I'll give you an example. Of the 4 core areas that are assessed in the state report card, 2 of them are heavily dependent on attendance metrics. In an environment where every school district is taking attendance in drastically different ways right now, because some districts have students completely at home, others have students who are attending every day in person, others have mixes, others are hybrid models, you're going to get wildly different swings in terms of that data as a result of the comparisons from district to district. So it just becomes really challenging, not to mention all of the challenges with standardized assessment right now, particularly for districts that have all of their students at home. So I like to see the state report card as an important accountability measure when it's an apples to apples comparison. But in an environment like this, where there's such drastically different circumstances between school districts, it's really hard to see that as a fair comparative model for the public, which is what it's designed to do.
And we can learn nothing from this data, or
I
are we
mean,
reporting it?
I mean, we will continue to administer standardized assessment in district, but I'm always supportive of providing districts flexibility in extreme circumstances like this to make their own decisions about those pieces, right? Locally, we're going to continue to administer standardized assessment. We're going to continue to utilize that data. I just don't feel like it's fair to be publishing state report cards at a time where it's really difficult to compare districts right now.
All right, I guess you have to put that in law, or is it just?
Ultimately, it doesn't prohibit us from doing what we need to do. It just gives other districts flexibility.
Okay.
Anything else?
Considering it's the beginning of the biennial budget, I'm not terribly optimistic about any of these resolutions except for the hiring of retired teachers, because that's already in Assembly Bill 1. I'm sorry, Senate Bill 1, but perhaps, but I'm not sure the legislators are going to take too many of these issues, given they're working very, very hard on the budget.
Any other discussion before we move on? Okay. In a related note to WASB resolutions, last year we had a resolution supporting, again, modification of the DPI report card. We also took that directly to our legislators in this area and were able to get AB 908 introduced as a bill in the Assembly last year. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we weren't able to go any farther than that in the Assembly or get it introduced, companion bill introduced in the Senate. What AB 908 would do, as Dr. Cohen was mentioning, would level the playing field between districts, because we do have the House of Corrections, and when students that are of high school age eligibility go through there, it falls on us to provide instruction for them. They may be there short-term, they may be there for the full school year, and the data we had previously was a little over 100 students per year would go through there, not that many at one time, and probably only 3 or 4 for the entire school year. But when the Friday count would come out, that's the number we were graded on for how many students were there. And we would be negatively impacted when those students were released and went back to their home districts. So AB 908 was an attempt to level that playing field again, so that districts are compared equally for the benefit they're providing their students. I was in contact with Representative Skronsky today. He does plan on bringing this bill back up again for this legislative cycle. He also mentioned that there's probably support for it in the Senate again, and he will work with his counterparts in the Assembly and in the Senate to bring this measure back up, and hopefully we can have a legislative correction to the statute for how the DPI report card is produced. It introduces this flaw in the grading system.
Is there anything we need to do for that, Larry? I know that committee is not really that active.
At this point, I think I'll let you know what I hear from Representative Skronsky. I know the budget's going to be forefront for the foreseeable future till June. At that point, we might be looking at some type of traction that this would get. It'll have to be reintroduced. It'll go back through the hearing process and through committee, and then hopefully back out onto the floor for a vote.
If I could add to that real quick, you know, Senator Craig was instrumental in helping us kind of get where we
Yes.
were with that, and obviously didn't run for reelection. So Senator Bradley is our new senator, and certainly someone that we're hopeful to continue to build a relationship with and help us advance. I do know that Senator Craig's chief of staff met with Senator Bradley's chief of staff during the transition to let him know about this legislation and that it was important. So they're aware of it, and as Mr. Gamble said, he's been in contact. So hopeful that Senator Bradley will be supportive as well.
Thank you.
And one of the co-sponsors on the Assembly Bill 908 last year won election to the Senate this last round. So there's an advocate for this in the Senate already. So moving on, school board liaison reports. Personnel policy 3360, Ms. Larson.
Yes, we have one policy on our agenda for tonight, and it is an action item. Policy 3660, building facilities maintenance. There is only one small change to this policy. This policy really could be eliminated as it is not a required policy. It is important to know, though, that we keep this policy because it conveys to the public that this is our policy to take care of our schools. You are seeing this policy tonight because it was last reviewed in 2011. And the only recommended change in this policy is in the language, which currently states that the Wisconsin Department of Commerce does routine inspections and they no longer do them. So that is the language that is being eliminated. So I would be looking for a motion to approve the changes to policy 3660, building facilities maintenance.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Lewis and second by Allen.
What is the title of this supposed to be? It says it's copy of building slash,
It's building/facilities maintenance.
oh, it's not copy of.
No, when you're making edits to a document, it says copy.
Oh, it's
But
just
the
way-
final document wouldn't say that.
Oh,
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Board liaison reports? Do we have any liaison reports?
I had, as you know, Mr. Milzer and I were working on the budget transformation. And we had asked everybody to turn in whatever things that they liked or what we saw or any recommendations that they had. So we met for several hours one evening after passing emails back and forth. We reviewed the information. And Mr. Milzer is going to be contacting other school districts to get additional copies of how they're presenting information. So we're not just limiting to 2. And then we're going to put together a mock-up of what we think the report's going to look like. We're anticipating that mock-up by March, or in the March timeframe. And at that point, we can have discussions and see where we go from there.
Question?
Yes. It seems late, to wait till March before there's any discussion or feedback. You may be way into something, and maybe that's not what the board was looking for. So I think it should come back sooner. I'm unclear as to what we're looking for from other districts. I think the board provided you with what they want to see. And I know we looked at other districts as examples, but it's going to be our information in the end. So I'm not sure, Jim, what you're looking to get from other districts. Maybe if they use the same accounting system and they already have the report, I could see that, but otherwise I'm unclear as to what that process is about.
Well, there were comments from board members regarding the items we had, and there were thoughts on how it might be. So we thought it would be a good idea to see a couple more examples and see what others were doing. If there was something that would fill a need from what was expressed from a board member, we could just use that approach perhaps, and it might be something that we hadn't thought of. So that was why we wanted to take a look at a couple extras before we start mocking up what this would look like.
What areas were you thinking that you needed more information on? I mean, it wasn't complicated. It was financial data, columns, categories,
Not every one of the board members was in favor of exactly that. I mean, some board members were in favor of that, so there'd be some of that. Other board members were in favor of more narrative. So all of that has to be blended together into the new board document.
Correct. And in order to get to that, wouldn't we have to have some board discussion to know? I mean, how do you plan, how's the blending going to work without us seeing anything or until March?
You brought things to the board and it was discussed and everyone gave their opinion. They also sent emails on what they felt about it. So that serves as the basis for whatever this document in the first draft would look like. When then we bring it to the board, it would be, here's what we heard, here's why we set it up this way, and we put in all of these pieces, and the board would have a chance to react to that, to say, yeah, I like that, or I don't like that, or I like this piece, or I don't like this piece, and we could take another go-around at it.
Does the timeline allow for a number of go-arounds?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We don't need the document until June,
You're right.
and I believe
That would be like 6 board meetings. There's potential between, there's 2 a month, so March, April, and May, that's 6 board meetings.
What other board members think?
Well,
I
that
think
was
it-
gonna be my question, between when, the first draft is in June, correct? So if the first meeting in March, we get that feedback, then we can move forward. I mean, it seems like the first meeting was productive. So I'll look forward to seeing what we see in March and move on.
I think it's a good idea. It gives us a starting off point. It gives us the ability to say yay or nay to certain parts of that document, and it also gives you time to fix those things that we would say nay to. So I think it's a good starting off point. And if there are 6 meetings in between, that definitely gives us enough time to come up with something that we can all be in favor of.
Well, if we're committing to the first meeting in March, I can be comfortable with that. First meeting in March. I just had some, Jim, you tend to give us documents very short notice, so that's my concern. That's been the experience, so if we're committing to first meeting in March, I'm good.
We'll do what we can to get it to you as soon as possible.
Is there anyone else?
Yep, I had meeting with Drs. Reuter and Cohn for my liaison role. It was kind of after the fact now, because we were talking about the principals coming tonight and assessment things, and then looking ahead at the teacher, or the students deciding to come back or not to virtual, to in-person from virtual. So that was kind of what we talked about, but we had our monthly meeting.
Very good. Anyone else?
I have been attending the SWSA meetings. We've had the Children's Hospital comes on once a month, and I think Judy kind of covered where that's at. The big news there is that we're starting to get vaccinated. That's what they're reporting there. Also, the budget is starting up, and also there is the first introduction of their legislation that includes a number of things, rehiring the annuitants, the liability protections, whether you have to require employers or employers requiring employees to be vaccinated. Those are some of the items that are there. Open enrollment, virtual instruction report. There's going to be required another report. I think, actually, they did share the report, the state report.
Yep, 185.
I'm not sure if all board members had access to that, or,
I'll check to see if I've sent it in a message. I don't think I have, but I can put, I thought I had, but I'll put it in this Friday again, so you can review it if you'd like.
so, also, I think one significant thing is requiring that school boards vote on virtual instruction. You know, and they have to vote every 14 days to continue it. So they're really into how decisions are made regarding virtual instruction. They want boards to be more involved.
So,
That's-
I hate to interrupt, but the governor did publish a statement today about supporting the Senate bill as it was revised, which does not include that.
Right.
No.
I'm just saying, these are some of the things that are
Yeah.
being discussed, you know, these are things that could come up. So, these meetings are informative, and then you kind of get a feel for what's going on. I think I also, there was some preliminary information on, as far as the state budget. I think I heard that the state's in better position financially than they had expected, given COVID. Part of that is because Medicare expenditures are down, either because people aren't accessing medical care, and then also we are getting higher federal reimbursement that also impacts the state's cost. So I guess there's good news there. So those are some things I'm hearing on these meetings. I will also share the slide deck that's provided. I don't know if anyone's reading those, but they're, it's easy to flip through and get information. That's all I
Thank you.
have.
Very good. Anyone else?
I attended the CISA meeting last night, I guess it was. And a lot of talk about new services for next year, new pricing for next year. I'll certainly get that information to everybody. Also, a lot of talk about virtual job symposium that they're doing for, because there's nothing, so they're doing a lot of things. They're doing a lot of things virtually. Check out the CISA website if you're interested in finding out more. But I'm sure Judy's up on all that as well.
Yeah, Dr. Reuter actually is working to investigate what those resources look like from CISA, because they're free and there's professional development that we potentially will want to access. So Dr. Reuter has that on his desk and is working through that.
They're also doing a lot of work on getting teachers, new substitute teachers licensed, and getting that streamlined because of the teacher shortage. So that was that.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing none. School and community engagement reports. Anybody?
At PTA meeting at Southwood Glen.
Okay. That is good.
I think I remember the Christmas concert at the high school. It was virtual.
Mm-hmm.
Was very interesting in students doing their performances in their bedrooms, and The backgrounds were, it was challenging, but they did it and they persisted, and that was good.
Well, it's fun to see how they can be creative and still achieve those, you know, the educational goals of their music instruction in this different environment, and then share that with other people with, you know, performance being one of the goals of the music curriculum. It was really, it's fun to see that and nice to be able to share that with the whole community.
Yep.
Especially considering that all stages are dark in terms of professional performance. I mean, we haven't seen a professional performance since March, and
Right.
in our high schools and our that's all we get to see.
It's still sad they're missing out on that experience, though, you know?
Yeah.
But they're being creative and trying to make trying to do what they can with the resources that they have,
Yeah,
so.
trying to make the best of it, but like I said, I still think it's sad that they're missing out on a lot of those high school experiences
Oh,
that they would
absolutely.
normally otherwise have.
No one else? Okay. Item 11, school board meeting debriefing. Do any board members have comments about tonight's meeting? Hearing none. Item 12, future agenda items. Open enrollment seats on January 27th. Waiver for hours of instruction on January 27th. Then Friends of Franklin, the audit report, state convention reports, and principal action plan updates for Pleasant View and Southwood Glen Elementary Schools. I think that's it, yep, okay. Item 13, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Ms. Witkowski makes a motion. Second by Mr. Sprague. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Meeting is adjourned at 8:35.